Can God still use me if I struggle with porn? Maybe I should just call it quits in this ministry gig, or maybe God is going to pull me off the stage with his divine hook or crook. Today, I want to explore that topic with my new buddy, Matt Cline from Edmonton. And before we do that, let me just say I'm going to be starting up a new Zoom group here in the next week. It's now mid-September, and in the next week, I'm going to be doing a Zoom group with pastors and those in ministry and missionaries. And I still have a couple spots left. So if you're interested, email me at bandofbrothers.care. We like to put about 5 guys in the group, and I know I got room for 2 more. So in the next couple days, you need to email me, and we'll see about, maybe sitting down and doing a Zoom talk and deciding if the group is good for you. So let's get back to that topic. Can God still use me if I struggle with porn? And I want to introduce Matt Cline from Edmonton. And welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Vern. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everything you're doing with pornography and impacting men and pastors and getting your message out. So I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Just tell us a little bit, before we get into, your addictive profile, let's just talk about your life outside of that. Just give us a bit of a snapshot of who you are and how old you are. You're married or not, or kids, or what kind of who you are.
Sure. Yeah. I'm 32. I live in Edmonton, like you say, and I'm married to my wife named Louise, and we have a little guy. He's almost 2. His name's David. And he's a real blast. I love this age, and we've also got one on the way.
Oh wow!
The next one is due February 2nd, which is my birthday, and it's also my mom's birthday. So we're praying for the 3rd generation February 2nd baby. That'd be pretty cool. And then I lead Restored Ministries out of Edmonton, but we reach people everywhere with the online world. You can go into different countries, and with Restored, the whole focus is just like you with Band of Brothers, is just tackling pornography, tackling this sexual addiction, and helping people get free. And not so much on the awareness aspect of it, but more so on let's actually help people get free. And we're seeing pretty cool results. So,
plus you and your buddy Braden, I'm saying that wrong, Braden?
Yeah, it's Braden. I'd say it's his mom's lifelong joke on him. It's spelled Braden, but it's pronounced Braden. So
you guys, go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, we do the Pure Victory podcast. You can find it at purevictorypodcast.com, and there's episodes coming out every week, and it's a blast. Yeah,
I noticed the one. I went to, you did one on sex play, and I immediately went to that one. After I listened to your testimony, I went to that one. I was going, wow, you guys are bold. And so that's going to be your highest rated one. That was an amazing podcast. I know.
Yeah. We don't talk about sex toys and role play and all those kinds of things in the church too often. So that was a good one to do.
Well done. Well, and you're a hockey guy, right? I'm a football guy, but you're a good Canadian hockey boy.
Yeah, I'm more Canadian than you are, I guess. But
apparently,
I played hockey growing up. It's been a long time. I stopped when I was 18. I got hurt. I played out where you are in Chilliwack. That's actually the last team I was on, playing junior out there, and I got concussion, and so I haven't played since. I mean, I play for fun, but not seriously. And yeah, that's definitely my main sport. So I'm an Oilers guy. I know you're probably Canucks out there, your listeners. I don't know, but I'm an Oilers guy. So
well, I'm just in the process this week of I'll still remain on as in a speaking role at the church, but my new young couple, they're going to be taking over the lead pastor role, and he's an Edmonton Oilers guy as well. And he has basically told me that the church is now switching from a football church where all my sermon metaphors are around football, and he's switching to a hockey church. So now all of the new metaphors in his speaking are going to be hockey metaphors. So, that's going to maybe be the biggest transition in our church.
I think so. That's a drastic one. I feel like it might be an upgrade though, Vern.
Oh man. He showed last week some of the 10 top shootout goals.
He's a true hockey guy.
He is. He watches stuff like that. But and one of the things that this podcast is specifically around guys that are in ministry, full-time ministry usually, and who are also struggling with addictive behaviors, for example, like porn. And one of the things early on in this podcast, I talked about the topic, should I quit the ministry if this is a struggle for me? And you also dealt with that in your story. your addictive, story of what you went through, and you had an interesting take on it that caused some pushback. And then in a later episode, you kind of came back and redoubled on that topic. So tell us a little bit of your story, how you have wrestled with that topic. Should I just quit ministry or not go into ministry if this is a life struggle for me?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I never wanted to be in ministry, and everybody in my life is. My dad and uncles and grandparents, everybody's a pastor. So growing up, everyone would say to me, like, are you going to be a pastor? And I just kind of laugh in their face, like, I'm going to be a hockey player. Right. And so ministry was never on the radar for me. And then, but through watching porn, especially in my early 20s, I just was sick of it. And I got free for 2.5 years, but purely on willpower, my own strength, and making great decisions in my own mind, and not relying on the Lord. And so I fell back into it for 2.5 more years, and the struggle was greater than ever. And then in that time, I was so confused. I'm like, man, I got free before, and why can't they get free now? And so I'd be praying desperately, like, Lord, help me. I don't understand why I can't stop this. And at the same time, I'd be praying like, Lord, I want to be used for you, and not necessarily in a ministry context vocationally, but I would just say, like, I want to be used. I want to impact people around the world for you. And so I'd pray these two prayers separately, not thinking that they were connected, like, help me get free from porn, and God, I want to be used by you. And in a worship service one day, I just heard the Lord whisper, and he said, Matt, I want to use you, but you've got to get pure. Like, you've got to get free from porn in order for me to use you. And I was like, oh man, that's an answer to 2 of my prayers. Like, this is the thing I need to hang on to, right? And so I did watch pornography one more time a few days later, and it was funny to me. It kind of felt like a breakup. Like, I knew it was going to be the last time, and it was. And so a few weeks after that, the Lord came into my room again in a powerful experience and said, hey, I want you to go start this ministry now, helping people with pornography. And so over the course of starting the ministry, what I experienced was the Lord bringing me into so much intimacy with him, just teaching me his word, giving me a passion, a hunger for his word like I've never experienced before. And so over the next few years, I realized that what the Lord was saying to me wasn't that, hey, because of pornography, I'm never going to be able to use you because that's like I'm holding it against you, or because there's sin in your life, I can't use you. Like, that wasn't what he was saying. What he was saying was, through getting intimate with me, right, that's where the fruit comes. So intimacy with Jesus means that's where, like, fruit is just going to flow through your life. Like, he's going to make fruit flow through you. He's going to impact people through you when you're intimate with him. But on the sin aspect, when we're intimate with Christ, we're separate from the powers of sin. So when he gives us a new identity, it says in Romans that the new identity is separate from the powers of sin. So if we're living in our new identity, in other words, if we're intimate with Christ, there's going to be fruit flowing through our lives. And at the same time, we're separate from the powers of sin. So to me, sin is evidence that I'm not intimate with Christ in those moments. And there's an area of my life where I haven't fully understood how to be intimate with him, how to be close to him, how to rely on his love and his strength. And so for me, hearing the Lord say, I want to use you, but you got to get pure. What he was really saying was, and I didn't understand it in the moment, that's why he said it how he said it. Yep. But what he could have said was, Matt, I need you to be intimate with me in order for me to use you. And so pornography was evidence that I wasn't intimate with him in the way that he needed.
Would you also say that it, and as I've listened to your podcast, it really is, I think, one of your great keys that you come back to over and over and over again is this word intimacy. And you have, everyone has a bit of a life story and a life message. And that, as I listen to your podcast, that's a theme that is just, you pound on it, not pound, but, again and again and again. It's all about intimacy with God. And so much of your journey and your freedom has flowed out of that experience. And I guess as I listen to that, would you, another way of putting it, and you can push back if this is not the best way to put it, is things like porn had blocked that ability to be intimate with God. They were an impediment. They were, they insulated you from that intimacy with God. Would you say that was part of it as well? As long as that lifestyle made it much more difficult, if not impossible to experience intimacy with God. Is that a legitimate way to put it? Or, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I mean, it definitely gets in the way. Like pornography gets in the way, but I think more so it's the things that allow pornography in your life. So it's the justifications, like, oh, I think one more time won't hurt, or I feel like I deserve this. It's the mindset. Like we're transformed by renewing our mind. And
Right.
so when I look at pornography in my own life, or when I help people get free, it's always like, okay, porn's in your life, so what's letting it be there? And it's typically lies that we believe, or it's lies about our value, that we don't understand our value. And so all of these things, like that's what I say, like porn is evidence that there's lies in our life. It's evidence that we don't truly know who we are. It's evidence that we don't know how to rely on the power of the Lord. And so, yeah, and that porn is evidence that we don't know who we are truly. But it's like you're saying, porn is a form of a blocker, because then moving forward from porn, we're just so full of shame and full of guilt.
Right.
And whereas like Hebrews says, like you can confidently come into the throne room of God, like boldly enter the throne room, right? But when we've watched porn last night, we don't do that because we're so full of shame. And so, yeah, absolutely, it's definitely a blocker.
Yeah, I've often described the almost hearing the sounds of chains clinking, like people on the chain gang shuffling into church Sunday morning. Some of the guys, and and how much more as a pastor when we're in that shame. Interesting, you described this idea of the power of God. And this morning, I was reminded of this verse from 2 Peter, and us pastors would know the great promise in 2 Peter 1:3 that says, His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life. And that's kind of the opening. But then if you go down a little bit later, he adds a bit of this imperative that says, for this reason, make every effort to add to your faith. And then he goes through a list: goodness, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness. But then he says this: if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, I love that, increasing, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I think what you're describing there is a blockage of power. And as a result, it's like being handicapped in terms of our ability to run with God, in terms of what he's called us to do. It just makes us, those two words, ineffective and unproductive. Like for me, that's a bit of a summary of the power you've talked about, but then the reality on the ground is, man, we're trying to run. I used to run 10K. That's as far as I got, but it would be like me running with rocks in my shoes, and those leg weights and tight jeans. Okay, we're going to run the sun run. You're going, I guess, I don't know. Right. Push back on me. What is that saying to you?
Yeah, well, first, I'm impressed that you've run 10K. I don't think I've ever got that far. I'm a short-term hockey guy, 30-second shifts.
Oh man, I ran a lot, but I puked out over the boards a few times. That's a whole sort of cardio. So,
yeah, good.
But yeah, does that resonate at all, those verses and what you're saying there?
I think that word, the words ineffective and unproductive, man, I think that sums it up so powerfully. And like I want to give hope to people too, and say, if you're in ministry and you're watching pornography, like I don't think that the Lord can never do anything through your life. I think what Vern is saying is true though, and really what Scripture says is that you're ineffective and you're unproductive compared to what you could be. Like there's so much more for you. And so it's comforting as a minister struggling with pornography to tell ourselves, well, there is fruit through our life. Like there are things happening, right? But can you imagine if you actually understood, like one of those words is self-control? Like if you understood self-control and the reliance of the Holy Spirit, you had that experience of knowing that. So when there's temptation in your life, you know how to rely on self-control and get through it every time. Can you imagine how you could minister so much more powerfully and be so much more productive and more effective? The first time that I ever experienced this was right after the Lord called me to get into ministry. I was like, man, I have no idea what to do. Like, I don't know how to start something. I don't know, right. And truthfully, I didn't know if Romans was in the Old Testament or New. Like I didn't know much. And so I met with this ministry leader and just saying like, hey, this is what I feel God calling me to. What should I do? And he said, I don't think he knew my limitations on biblical knowledge and ministry, but he said, hey, I want you to come talk to my guys about pornography, and the guys that he ministered to. And so this was my first time talking
Oh,
to
wow.
somebody about talking to
Yeah.
a group about pornography. And I hadn't really studied, it was brand new. The call was brand new. And so I said to the guy, well, I can do that, but why don't you? And he's like, well, it's pretty hard to minister to them when I'm struggling with porn myself. And
Interesting.
17 years of marriage, been in ministry the whole time. And that was the biggest fight in their marriage. And it was limiting him in ministry. And so I was able to go in and do that. But what was interesting was that he had so much more Bible knowledge than I did. He
Yeah.
had so much more experience. But that night, there were people that he had ministered to for a year, 2 years, 3 years, who got saved when they heard a message on the power of God. And so that's not anything to do with me. Like, I knew nothing. That's like evidence that God's power is great, right? But when
Yeah.
we're able to talk about things freely and really talk about how the power of God sets us free from an experiential, from a convicted mindset, then there's so much power rather than talking about it in theory when you've actually lived it.
Yeah, and Matt, I just as you were sharing, I don't think any of us want to be in that situation where 10, 15, 20 years of struggling in ministry, we're trying to, um, allow, it's like a hose that's been kinked, and we're trying to allow, to do things, but we've got all of these challenges. We know that's the case. And I just had a sense, to be a little bit, I don't know, charismatic here for a second, but I just
Yeah,
had a
love
sense
it.
that right now there are some people that are listening to you, especially young guys. You're youth pastor, you're early in ministry, and this is an issue for you. And as you hear Matt, you just going, Matt, I don't want to be here 10 years from now. I feel the call of God on my life, but man, if I'm going to do this for 10 years in this, and in this conflicted way, I just can't do this. And you just listen to what Matt said right now. And I just strongly encourage you to reach out to Matt, and we'll give you some information at the end on how to do that. He's a young guy. I'm turning 60 this fall. He's still got a 3 in front of his number. So I really want you to hear God's invitation to you, because what we're talking about here is turning away. The one thing we haven't talked about is turning away from self-reliance. Because I know the thing that you brought up in your podcast, when you talk about leaning into self-control, leaning into intimacy, I know from listening to your podcast, that's not a self-reliant or just an isolated thing. Talk to me a little bit, about the interdependency that you guys recommend. That's part of, it's like self-control through a group of people, through
Yeah.
friends, and talk a little bit about that, because I hear that sometimes. Okay, I'm just going to get tight with God, and I'm going to get close to God, and
Yeah.
me and him are going to battle through this thing. And I don't think that's what you're saying, is it?
And what does that look like, right? Like, okay, I've heard and I've read about intimacy with Christ, but what does that actually look like? So
Yeah.
one thing that I've started saying because of that question is, people are like, well, what does that mean? And so I started talking about practical intimacy with Christ. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that we teach in our program, is practical applications scripturally. And so when you talk about self-control, like it says to submit yourself to the Lord, resist the devil, and he'll flee from you, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so often we just think, oh, I got to resist. Well, submitting yourself to the Lord is actually the power, and that's the first thing that it says. And so what does that mean? Well, in the Bible, it gives us instructions on how to do that. And so practical intimacy with Christ means, when it says to be thankful in all circumstances,
Right.
can you imagine if you were thankful in every single circumstance of your life, just thankful for everything that God's given you? You would never sin. Can you imagine if you knew how to worship, where he says that the Father's looking for worshipers? There's 66 chapters devoted to David's life on worship. Like, it's a huge thing, right? And
Right.
so if we knew not just how to worship sometimes, but how to live like as we are a worshiper, like that's part of our identity. If we knew how to do that, we would never have to sin, because our hearts would be full. And so sin, like pornography, shows that there's a hole in our heart. There's something
Right.
that we're longing for. We're longing for a connection. We're longing for value. We're longing for love. And so whether we get it from porn or whether porn just numbs the pain of not having whatever we're longing for,
right?
When we can learn to be practically intimate and just like thank the Lord for everything that he's given us. Thank him for the little things. Thank him for the big things. Thank him for breath. Thank him that I have a sex drive, because can you imagine if you never had a sex drive? That wouldn't be ideal.
Yeah.
So when temptation comes, and this is to your point about self-control, when temptation comes, I teach people, don't just try to resist the thought. Welcome the Lord into that. And say like, Lord, thank you that you've given me a sex drive, and thank you that you're going to be the one who gets me through. My aim in life, my primary purpose is to bring you glory, Lord, and I'm going to bring you glory in this moment right now. And so when I do that, literally, like, the temptation might last 30 seconds or a minute or maybe 5 minutes, but it's different than trying to resist for 2 hours and struggling. And it's, you go to bed at 11 and it's 1 a.m. and you're still like, oh man, I can't stop thinking about this. And finally you're like, I may as well just masturbate to get some peace and go to bed. Right. So self-control is not just in willpower. Self-control is like, in Proverbs 16, it says that if you can learn to rule your spirit, you're more impressive in the eyes of the Lord than one who takes a whole city. And that's pretty crazy to me.
Yeah.
And so if you can learn to rule your spirit and go, man, I'm like tempted right now, but I'm going to praise God in the moment. I'm going to bring worship to him. I'm going to thank him for everything he's given me. This is what Adam and Eve didn't do. Adam and Eve, I don't know, had thousands of other trees in the garden that they could have eaten from. And they could have been so thankful, praising God for every other tree, for all of the food that he had provided. But Satan had them focus on the one thing that wasn't for them. And they, instead of being thankful for everything that they had, instead of worshiping God, they focused on the one thing and they forgot practical intimacy with Christ.
That's encouraging, because I sorry, I got a frog in my throat here. I think that role of gratitude, even that role of invitation. I know the last couple of days, not the last couple of weeks, I've actually been practicing this little discipline of every time I start a new activity, I invite God into it. So I sit down to watch a football game, I invite God into it. I sit down to work on my fence, I invite God into it. I go and work on a sermon, I invite God into it. Invite God into everything you do. When I'm feeling tempted, invite God into it. Practice the intimacy. And then I love what you're saying. Boy, if we layer that with gratitude, that's huge. And let me add, sometimes it also means calling out to my brother. I've got about 3 or 4 guys on my speed dial, or a text. I just say, hey, pray for me. I'm just and sometimes when I do that, or I share that with a group of guys, it's gone, so
Absolutely.
The interdependence in terms of that. I think sometimes the one thing you guys, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, some of the myths around my own recovery. One of the things I think ministers or, missionaries or pastors can fall into, the idea of, well, if I just do a lot of ministry, I can maybe crowd out or push out these addictive struggles. Well, I think we're realizing that doesn't work any better than just getting married didn't really work for you, or just you're getting older, right? Just all ministry does is maybe reveals the cracks even more, that the healing and the hurt that you've got to press into. So absolutely.
Well, there's a Bible school in Edmonton, and it's probably not unlike other Bible schools. So when you're first enrolling, you have to sign a form, and on the form there's a box and it says, I will not watch pornography. And so you're supposed to check that box.
Okay.
So what's that doing to a guy who's hooked on pornography?
Yeah.
It's telling him, if you're going to be in ministry, you better lie and you better hide this.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a way better approach would be, if I'm struggling with pornography, I'm going to seek out help.
Yes.
Because what that does, when you're talking about reaching out to a buddy, I think when you're willing to expose yourself, that brings glory to God right there.
Absolutely.
That breaks the shame. That breaks the power of darkness over your life. And so, Vern, you're going to have to edit this out. I forget what you were saying. I was going to say something.
That's okay. You were just talking about Bible school, and we're just talking about the fact sometimes it means reaching out. It means going through. Yeah.
And you were saying about the pressure, about ministry.
Absolutely.
Ministry pressure. Yeah. Okay, good. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Hey, no, this is all good. I love the fact that it sometimes just reveals stuff that we haven't dealt with in our lives, and the cracks and the fissures that we need to invite God into, not just the good stuff, the stuff that we brought into our lives, right?
Yeah, and absolutely. And so there was a guy who actually went through that Bible school that now he's been in ministry about 10 years and he's a pastor. And so he reached out about a month or two ago and said, like, man, I feel myself slipping. I've been free from porn for a bit, but I feel myself slipping. And I said to him, do you feel content in your ministry? And he said, no, not at all. And so now he's involved himself in another ministry that he said he wouldn't have done that if he felt content in his primary ministry. So
okay.
I'm like, oh, this is scary. And so then I said, do you have experience? Like, do you have a prayer life? And he said, yeah, I pray all the time. I said, do you pray about your porn issue? Like, do you pray about your temptation? And he said, honestly, he thought about it. He's like, I think every experience and powerful encounter I've ever had with God is in the context of ministry. There's not been times where it's personal, where it's just like a time outside of church where I've had powerful times with the Lord. And so what he's doing is he's just like, okay, I'm not content in this ministry. Now I need to do more ministry. And so now he feels himself slipping back into pornography. And there's so much pressure when we do that. There's so much pressure to hide our sin, to perform. And man, I think God would so prefer a man who is never in ministry in his life, but he lives a holy life and he's open and he's free, rather than a man who is doing work for the Lord, but he's not free in his soul. I think God cares so much more about the freedom in our souls, and he wants his kids to be free.
Well, and I've heard someone say, it's not that God can't use us in ministry, but he loves us. And sometimes for our own good, he will orchestrate things or whatever that we're exposed, or some of those areas. And I guess totally. My buddy Nate Larkin from the Pirate Monk podcast, he uses the Samson imagery. God powerfully used Samson. There's no doubt about it. But the temple was also brought down on his own head. And how many times do we watch in the news God using people? But if we don't lean into this, it will destroy us. And sometimes God loves us too much as his children. I mean, I got two pastor buddies, one's looking at jail and one is in jail right now. And now that's an extreme situation, but put that back 5-10 years and God's invitation for them would have been, man, get help, get healing, reach out in those situations. So, Matt, I want to just thank you for just sharing just a little bit around your thoughts around ministry. And I want to just have, if you can just share with some of the guys how they can get a hold of you, because I really felt as you were talking before that there are some guys right now who are listening to this and they just have this real urge. I got to talk to Matt. I got to reach out to him. Just tell us a little bit of how people can connect with you.
Sure, yeah. So restoredministries.ca, that's restored with a D on the end, restoredministries.ca. We got programs there. So there's one-on-one coaching that people register for. And so we can chat one-on-one. And then there's a boot camp that people take, which is 8 video lessons with worksheets. And people just do that on their own. Mm-hmm. But our premium program is the Pure Freedom Journey. And so the Pure Freedom Journey, there's weekly ongoing teaching videos that go out. And there's a Facebook group for guys to get in. And so this is only for guys, the Facebook group, but women can register for the boot camp or the Pure Freedom Journey as well. They just won't be in the men's Facebook group. But that's a really amazing thing, just to have that community aspect and have guys praying for you and supporting you. And then, and there's Facebook Lives from trainers, from myself and different people every week. So and that's all at the programs tab on restoredministries.ca, and there's the podcast, and you can look around the site. So, and like you're saying, Vern, I just encourage you, if you're a leader, especially if you're, well, not especially, I was going to say especially if you're a young leader, but if you're a young leader or old leader, it doesn't matter. Like Vern is saying, there's pastors who are right now in jail, or not in jail, but close to it. Or there's other pastors. I know of a pastor who a year ago quit his ministry and now is working a secular job because of pornography, and pastors who've been in infidelity and all of this stuff. And you never think it will be you. You never think that it will be. But the nature of porn is it's not enough. Whatever you're looking at is not enough. You got to go to the next hit, the next hit, the next thing. And so I encourage you, be urgent and be desperate about this. And let's get this out of your life once and for all. Let's learn how to be practically intimate forever so we can be porn free and we can minister powerfully. So be desperate, whether it's you go to Vern, you go to Restored Ministries, you go to whoever else. I just encourage you, let's deal with this thing now.
Yeah, and I love recommending other guys. People come to our church sometimes, and I say to them, I don't know if this is the best church for you. Chilliwack's got lots of churches, for example. And I just say to them, God leads people. It takes lots of types of churches to reach lots of types of people. And I think when it comes to something this vulnerable and this close, it takes different people with different stories, different things. And so I love just, spreading the ministry around and how do we help people? That's my heart. And if we give stuff away, then God, returns stuff to us. So anyways, God bless you, Matt. God bless Braden as well. And also encourage the listeners to check out the podcast. I don't know about you, but I can't get enough podcasts. All you recovery guys out there, what are you doing with your time? Sometimes I run out of recovery podcasts on my daily walk. So just another podcast for me is not a bad thing for me to reinforce my recovery. So God bless you, Matt. And it's great to chat with you. And sorry about the Oilers this year, but hope springs eternal. My Cowboys this year are going to recover from their first week loss. And Matt Dobshoots, if you're listening to this, the Chicago Bears are going down in flames. So there we go.
Thanks, Vern.
Great talking to you guys. Bye-bye.